My name's Laura Raskin. I'm an assistant editor at Architectural Record, and we're lucky to have Marlon Blackwell here. I thought first I would just read a brief bio of Marlon for those of you who don't know him. Marlon practices architecture in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and serves as distinguished professor and department head in the School of Architecture at the University of Arkansas. Working outside the architectural mainstream, his architecture is based in design strategies that celebrate vernaculars, draw upon them, and seek to transgress conventional boundaries for architecture. He often likes to say that architecture can happen anywhere at any budget, and his firm's work is a testament to that. St. Nicholas Eastern Orthodox Church in Springdale, Arkansas, repurposes an existing metal shop and won a World Architecture Festival Award. The Ruth Lilly Visitors Pavilion in Indianapolis received an AIA Honor Award this year. They also recently completed the interiors for the shop at the Crystal Bridges Museum in Bentonville, Arkansas. And currently the firm is working as part of a multidisciplinary team on a redesign of Point State Park in Pittsburgh and a restoration and addition to the University of Arkansas's Architecture School. So I thought, Marlon, we could actually start with the Architecture School.
Right.
This is I'm trying to get to the slide.
That's a golf
Okay.
club. Yeah.
So this is a building that you're intimately familiar with. You're here
Right.
every week teaching. So I thought you could talk a little bit about what it's like to renovate and design an addition for a place that obviously means so much to you. Teaching is really important to you. So maybe tell us a little bit about that project.
Well, first and foremost, is a great opportunity given to us by the university, which universities don't often do that, is allow faculty members to actually design something. So we teamed up with a really good firm, good friends of ours, Polk Stanley Wilcox in Arkansas, and ventured to do this. And we were involved also in helping raise the money with the Reynolds Foundation, so developing the scheme for that. So we sort of earned the right to get to do the building through a $10 million gift that was added to $25 million that the university had. So that set the stage for it. I think the idea of adding to a Beaux-Arts building from the 30s that's trying to look like something from the 18th century or 19th century is a challenge in itself. And what we've proposed, I think locally, is quite controversial, and we were prepared for that. But I think the faculty and the students expected us to look forward and at the same time to draw inspiration and develop what I like to call a condition of resonance with the existing building. So we did that through proportion, through positioning, relationships that clearly develops an alignment with what's there, but as you can see, is definitely different. It's a complete inversion of the way in which a Beaux-Arts building is masked, with the figure ground, the figures being the windows, the massing being the ground. We've inverted that as in a kind of didactic way for students to see other ways that you can think about buildings. So the figure is actually the building itself, and the ground is the fenestration, which is, in this case, a 200-foot-long west-facing facade of a fritted glass brise-soleil over a custom steel and glass curtain wall system where all the studios are at, is what you're looking at here.
Okay.
So that was the challenge, and we tried to think about it didactically, how we use concrete. It really becomes a learning tool, and keep our heads down and work on what we thought was right rather than constantly looking over our shoulders. And that meant quietly sometimes ignoring what the faculty had to say, what the students, we had to basically design it on our own terms. Even though we went through programming and everything, we just would not allow it to be a design by committee scenario.
Did you involve any of your students in the process, or once you had decided on a
Right.
scheme?
I think we interviewed them, the students, to kind of get their feedback. What do you need in architecture? What do we have? What do we don't have? What's working? What's not working? And we tried to address that. One of the things that came out of it, which is somewhat controversial, is a student lounge. a kind of place to hang out. Of course,
Why was that controversial?
well, because things happen other than just hanging out. We don't want to talk about, but so oversight and that sort of thing. So we've got this sort of padded cell, but it's a really cool space. No corners in it. That they have a place for their student organizations. They have a place to go to, hang out, just chill out. We've got showers, because we all know being in architecture school means sometimes. Out of that also came a faculty lounge, which is a place to sort of retreat, reflect, socialize, have a place to group, and then come back out. So it's something for both parties that I think will be useful, but that came out of the programming.
Okay. And when will it be complete?
It will be complete in August 2013,
Okay.
and then we'll have the grand opening in the fall of 2013. Yeah.
So this is a good segue for you to talk a bit about teaching, which I know is really important to you.
Yep.
And I'm curious sort of what you feel is the most important thing to impart to your students these days, and also working in such a small community. Are these students? How are you teaching these students?
Well, we teach. Arkansas is a 5-year program, so it's that we don't have a graduate program. It's 5-year undergrad, first professional. So things are very foundational. We are working very hard to instill agency in our students, which is the ability to work in and on the world in any scenario. So students are introduced to urban issues, issues of tectonics, issues of making, and we still draw by hand. They draw by hand all the way through the 5 years, but they also do the digital. And the challenge is trying to help them understand how they develop a relationship between both of those mediums that's productive and that's critical. So the idea is that once they leave the school, we're all faced with multiple ways we can practice right now, and it isn't just one way, and we try to introduce them to that, but at the same time give them a foundation in the language of architecture, how designs emerge and how they're refined. So we want to move them beyond the diagram, and my argument there is 80% of what's built is an extruded diagram, and so the question is, where do you go from there in terms of resoluteness? How do you develop that in a work? And that's something that I think is real important to transfer to them. So it's really transferring disciplinary knowledge as well as the traditional disciplinary knowledge, but also new knowledge as well. So long-winded answer, but I think the other reason that I think that teaching and practicing is important is that students, they'll tolerate a lot, but they don't tolerate people who don't practice what they teach. And so it keeps you in check. So I've had a few times where I've thought, God, I could really use the money, just do this, and it's like, nah, it's not worth it. I'm gonna toe the line, and there's nothing better than having, I think, the students may not like you personally, but to have their respect, I think, is great, and they see, I think, the value of working from principles and really putting into effect what you're sort of talking about and trying to instill in them at the school.
So this next slide is a rendering of the Point State Park in Pittsburgh, which you're working on a multidisciplinary team to sort of rethink for better public use. And I'm wondering if you could talk about this project and also about what it's like to work on a team with people from all these different areas.
Well, we were shortlisted with 4 other teams to revision Point State Park, which is where the Allegheny and the Ohio come together in Pittsburgh, very prominent park in the downtown. And we had to put together a team, and we took that very seriously. It's said that architects no longer are just authors of buildings, but we're becoming more and more authors of strategic processes, ways in which projects like this can emerge at a variety of scales and different ways of thinking. So we brought on a sculptor, Kendall Buster. We brought in Guy Nordenson, a structural engineer, Richard Renfro, a lighting designer. We brought in D-Land Studio, Susanna Drake, landscape. I don't know if I've left anybody out, but that was the whole team, and we worked collaboratively together. And it was really great keeping each other in check. And this particular project is a way of developing a new entrance into the park. I don't know if this is the best image to show that, but also extending the highway infrastructure, the language of that, to begin to redistribute program in this big empty park in the downtown. So what you see in the curved move is the new museum. What's the name of that museum, John? Fort Pitt Museum, which is in a really awkward place right now. A new light rail station. And so we're really making a stadium complementary to the Pittsburgh Steelers Stadium or the Pirates Stadium, a kind of culture stadium for events to take place, and for these shaded transitions to the arch that you see here, which I don't know if we have an image of that. Yeah, okay. Which is basically a bridge under the interstate, and you can see the old concrete arches through what we're doing, but we're proposing to reskin that through a series of tension cables that hold up a perforated interference blue stainless steel skin that then is backlit. So during the day it has iridescence, it constantly changing as light bounces off walking surfaces and water to kind of set up this transition to the other side of the park. But at night, each of the tension rods light up, and that creates a kind of three-dimensional effect, and the old bridge reemerges. So it creates a kind of hologram type of effect. And it's actually the figure goes underwater and back up. So we're refiguring the portal to something that isn't aligned with infrastructural language. And so what we're hoping is this will become Pittsburgh's bean. Like Chicago.
And this is an area that currently is really hard for the public to access or
yeah,
have.
I mean, it's everywhere from accessibility to experience, which is really kind of awful. The place never transcends the infrastructure, so you always are reminded that you're underneath the interstate. Mm-hmm. So this is an attempt to kind of flip the tables on that.
Yeah. It also seems these days like architects are having more and more of a say in the way cities function, not just one-off buildings.
Right.
So I imagine that
we
would be
redesigned all the pathways, all the relationships at the edges. I mean, it's a big project, and we don't have time to go through all of it. But we actually gave the point a point, and rethinking about how that would, emerge as a place, but also as something visual from all around the city. Mm-hmm. Multiple ways to really reinvigorate this, not so much through a building, but through design.
And this next slide here is the museum store within the new Crystal Bridges Museum in Bentonville.
Yeah, the Moshe Safdie building.
Which Moshe Safdie did. Yeah. And Marlon, your firm, just did the store. So
right.
Maybe you could tell us a bit about what this process was like, and then what it's like to have this institution come to your hometown. And
well, it's totally transformational. The museum is to the cultural infrastructure of the region, and of course it's one of the I think first major art museum to be built in the country in the last 30, 40 years. So it's a big deal. I think it's very upsetting. I love the fact that it's very upsetting to a lot of folks in New York and East Coast and West Coast that how dare you put one of the great American collections in the middle of Arkansas. Only 250,000 people a year will see it when millions could see it. But that's the point, and that's why we're there. That's why we're making architecture in these places. We have a great need, and what a lot of these folks don't realize that places like Harvard and Columbia, they're populated with people from my state and people from the South and people from the Midwest. They populate it. They come with these great work ethic and aspirations to do well. And so I don't get the whole snobbery about it, but that's been very controversial. I have to tell you that it's conceptually very profound in its setting. We had the opportunity to do the store. They wanted somebody local. We had to compete for it. I think we paid from some of the budgetary sins of the designer on the museum. They really watched our budget closely. I don't know, they didn't watch the other one so close. But nonetheless, this is our first project. Was in a curved retail project where we had it totally CNC milled. It was all fabricated on a 3-axis CNC machine. It's all plywood and walnut. There are 280 something ribs that form the undercarriage of the ceiling and then wraps down around you. It's a way of enveloping you in the warmth and the texture of our hardwoods of walnut and cherry. But every rib is different, so we're all Revit in my firm, so we were able to go directly from our Revit files directly into the CNC, seamless, and we're able to do this, I think, for $600,000. And they've already, in 4 months, made their money back, what they spent on it. So it also demonstrates that design can actually be profitable for your clients.
Good. And this slide is the St. Nicholas Church, which this building was originally a metal shop.
Yeah.
Metal shed.
Shed with 3 garage bays. Yeah.
And you transformed it on a relatively low budget
$100
into this
a square foot. Yeah.
really beautiful project for a pretty traditional congregation. Mm-hmm. And yet they trusted you to do something that was, I think, pretty daring.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that process.
Sure. Well, when the bishop came from Miami to bless the place, his heart literally stopped, and he had to go to the hospital. He's in his 80s, so we'd like to think it had more to do with his health than the building itself. But the process started off as a kind of disappointment when we were presented with this building, and we thought, great, we're going to get to do a church. But they said, well, you can't tear it down. And unfortunately, we don't have a before shot, but there's a metal shed in there. And so we had to keep it. But what we learned quickly was that we began to understand the traditions, the icons, the rituals of the church, and how to incorporate that. But at the same time, we leveraged the budget. So constantly to say, hey, we can't give you a Byzantine brick-clad, dome, ornate building. You had $100 a square foot. So how we came at it was through classical Greek proportioning, and demonstrated that we took a church, an Antiochian Orthodox church, and proportioned it. We did the same thing with this and showed them the relationships. This is also along an interstate, so the idea of it acting as a type of billboard amongst 4 or 5 other churches. We have a lot of churches in Arkansas. So I think more per square mile than probably any place. But so they were shocked, I would say, but it provided them everything they needed to worship, and worship in dignity. And the bottom line is, whether one likes the outside or not, it does create a more dignified presence in the community. And so they've accepted it, and then of course on the inside they really quite like it. It works very well for how they worship. We think about overflow and how that works. So walls open up to allow for overflow, and there's places to socialize, classrooms, so everything they need for where they are right now.
Mm-hmm. And we don't have a picture of it. We don't have a slide of it, but in lieu of a dome that you can see from the exterior of the building, there's a sort of recessed dome in the congregation space.
They have to have a dome. We leverage that too, because we said, well, you can't cut through the building and put a dome on top because you have to cut the major structure. We can put a dome, but in the space, and they like that, but they couldn't afford it. So our contractor came up with an idea. We traded 2 cases of beer for a satellite dish, and so their dome is a satellite dish. And they really got into the spirit of that. One of the fellows said, hey, I'd love to get this chair I saw for a throne for the bishop when he comes. It's a big wooden chair with purple crushed velvet. and I can get it for free. And I said, well, where can you get it? And he goes, from the local liquor store. It's in part of an ad campaign, but I don't know what to do with the embroidered CR on the chair. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, well, Crown Royal. And we thought about it, and I said, well, no, it's Christ the Redeemer. So that kind of resourcefulness kind of was the process and by which we worked.
So you're based in Fayetteville, and you have a really small office. How many people are in your office right now?
Currently, there are 8 of us. There's my partner and wife, Ati, and then we have John Volkins, newly registered, I might add, and 6 others who are in the firm. So we keep it relatively small and manageable.
And your firm won a BIM award this year for being a small firm. And I'm wondering if you can talk about the challenges of maintaining such a small firm and doing a really broad range of work, both in terms of budget and also location.
Can you rephrase that? I'm trying to figure out what you want me to answer there.
Maybe just to talk about...
Is it about BIM, or is it about just the nature of projects?
We'll talk about the challenges of being a small firm and delivering projects.
Well, like many firms, we get invited to dinner, but a lot of times we don't get to sit at the table, and sometimes we get to eat, sometimes we don't. So being small, it makes us very agile, I think. We changed our business model recently, say 3 years ago, to begin teaming up with other firms if it made sense. So we're working on a high school now with 2 other firms. We teamed up on the architecture school, which is what we won the BIM award for. And we were just working on a $20,000 carport recently. So we like the range of work that we can do, and I think being small allows that. I can't imagine being large. I think working in the way we are digitally allows us to interface with anyone, our consultants of any size, any scale, because there's a fluidity, I think, to these new technologies of how you interface with others in real time. And that's what we're doing. We've got great people in the office who are really motivated by design, but by the technologies and how they work together. So with Revit, we've sort of invented our own way to talk to our partners in real time, working on Revit, sharing the information in very concise and precise ways. And it gives us a great product for our client and for the user in terms of a delivery method. So that's been good.
Okay. I think we're out of time, but is there any question from the audience?
Yeah, let me hand you the microphone.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of delightful slides of smaller projects here. I was wondering if you could just run through those real quick in a Cook's tour and just kind of identify what they are.
Oh, this is the Indianapolis Visitor Center for the 100-acre Art and Nature Park, for the Indianapolis Museum of Art, the interior for the church. Right. The exterior of the St. Nicholas Church. This is the new addition to the architecture school. Yeah. Pittsburgh, the Portal to the Point redesign, and the redesign of the arch. This is a honey house. This is for a beekeeper, a small structure to extract honey and bottle honey. This is a tower in Fayetteville, which is actually a house, but it's more of a retreat. But it sits right in the downtown Fayetteville, just about, or in the city limits of Fayetteville. Yeah, it's like a cabin in. Well, the local name for it is Trailer on a Stick, but we like to call it God's mailbox. So, yeah. And this is a redo of a 100-year-old hardware store into a public library and a community room for a small town in Gentry, Arkansas, of 2,500 people. Great story with this one. They started with 300 library card holders in a town of 2,500. Once the project's complete, they now have 2,300 library card holders, and we did it on Main Street rather than out on the interstate. So, time?
I think we're about out of time.
I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Marlon, Laura, thank you very much. These are beautiful projects.